Welcome to the Munch and Learn series, where we discuss pressing issues facing businesses today and how do they resonate with our modern business challenges. I would like to first of all go through, for anybody that's on the call that has questions, I'll moderate those questions. If you could put them into the chat box, I'll try and interject with Alex either when there's an actual break or at the end of the session. So please put those any questions into the chat box. So first of all, I'd like to introduce my guest today, who's Alex Duggan. Very privileged to have an expert with us in his field. He's the driving force behind Risk Limited, a leading consultancy in risk and resilience management. Alex, how do you feel about today's session?
Hello, Nick. Thanks very much for inviting me. I'm looking forward to it. I'm really looking forward to discussing what we do here at Rescue and how we can assist SMEs with a wide range of knowledge and service offerings.
Excellent. But before we get into the details about the business, what you do and what Rescue offers to its clients, important though that is, tell us a little bit about yourself. Where were you born and brought up?
I was born and brought up, I was born in Carmarthen in South Wales. Mm-hmm. My father was in the oil industry, so we travelled around extensively with his job. We were living in Holland at the time, but he was insistent I was born on Welsh soil, just in case I became a good rugby player, which never happened. So that's basically background to me. I grew up in Holland, London, Abu Dhabi in the Middle East, Sierra Leone in West Africa, and latterly, from about the age of 12, Aberdeen in Scotland.
Okay, so you're well-travelled, to say the least.
Indeed.
Yeah, you disguise your Welsh accent quite well.
I do. I think I've been out of Scotland. I think I've been out of Wales for such a long time that it's a mixture of everything in there at the moment.
Okay. Well, obviously that's the background. So, where have you called home since you sort of engaged in your career, in health and safety?
Certainly, yes. Well, my own career, I've definitely got the expat bug from my parents, because my own career has taken me all over the world. And I've worked in around 20 countries on 4 continents, as well as the UK. I've been fortunate to live and work extensively in the Middle East, Dubai and Doha, North and South Africa. I lived in Cape Town for 3.5 years, and Australia as well. I came back to the UK in 2017, and Newbury has been my home ever since.
Okay, so back in 6 years. Just out of curiosity, where was if you had to go back and live somewhere where you lived before, where would you choose to go back to?
Cape Town, without a doubt.
Funny enough, just the way you described it, I thought you might say that. But I didn't know.
Great wine, great wine.
Yes, okay. So, and just to before we get into the business side of things, tell us a little bit about your family. It's always nice to know who's behind the business people we talk to.
Well, certainly, yes. I mean, I'm divorced, but I've got an amicable relationship with my ex-wife. We actually live in the same village, albeit at opposite ends. I've got 2 children, twins of 16. Wow. I've got a boy and a girl. They're both exceptional athletes. My daughter's an exceptional trampolinist, and my son is a rugby player, and he played with London Irish last year. So he's the one that's actually missed a generation with me. But it's jumped to him.
Those Welsh genes are coming through.
Those Welsh genes are definitely coming through.
Excellent. Okay. Well, that's great. So I think we learned a little bit about you, a well-travelled man, a bit about your family, and let's now talk about your experience in sort of the health and safety sort of business community. Without getting to the specific of Rescue, give us an overview of the experience in that field of health and safety, because I'm guessing a lot of people will have a basic understanding of it, but not necessarily the full breadth of what it means. So you've got about 30 years experience in it, so just give us a little bit of background on your view on the industry.
Yes, it's changed a great deal since I started. When I started health and safety, the risks at work were largely defined as physical and reactionary. People would have an accident. We need to do something about health and safety. How do we do that? And over the years, there has been a gradual shift in that, quite rightly too. We're now looking at psychosocial things. We're looking at pressure turning into stress. We're looking at high levels of absence. We're looking at disability. And we're also looking at an aging workforce. So it's much more people-centered, with mental health and mental stress kind of thing, that kind of thing there. So there's been a shift in safety culture and inclusion in that side of things there. And I can demonstrate that with a slide, actually, if I can put a slide up.
Yeah, sure. Just you should be able to if you want to share the screen.
Can you see that?
It's just come up now. Yeah, that's great.
Lovely. So when I started, it was very much like a reactive. So the red box, safety is important. We do it every time we have an accident. And over the years, and this is just a way of describing how companies evolve their safety culture, but it's a good way of looking at the last 30 years as well, and how things are now moving in the right direction to things like generative. This is how we do business around here. Safety is interwoven into our actual business itself. And that's where people want to get to. You want to get to the point where you don't want it to be pathological, but who cares as long as we're doing it something we don't get caught, all the way up to the proactive and the generative side of health and safety as well. And that's a good way of describing the last 30 years for me. When I first started, it was very much in the red box. And a lot of accidents happened, like Piper Alpha and all of these things, which drove health and safety.
Yeah.
And now we're getting much more into the generative side of things as well.
And are there, I mean, I know you've worked in sort of oil and big industries like that. Are there sort of some industries, I have a sort of a background in shopping centre construction and things. I know how important that was for people to build centres without, well, certainly no fatal accidents in the process of building them, and that moved on a lot from the 80s in doing that, particularly in Europe. But in terms of type of industries, are there some industries which are ahead of the game, and others that are perhaps lagging, or doesn't it quite work like that?
There are certain companies, there are certain industries that have been more highly regulated, and quite rightly so, like construction, for instance. A lot of incidents happening in construction, a lot of incidents happening in oil and gas, and those kind of industries have to actually sort of pick up the game. There's been some serious accidents within that in the past. There's definitely been a culture shift within that. And certainly some of the bigger companies, and I've worked for some of the bigger companies, Middle East companies in construction when I was in the Middle East, and there's definitely been a shift to the better within that. And certainly that's come from the likes of the UK, Australia, South Africa, which have influenced that.
Yeah. Okay. And just tell me, step back a bit before we talk in detail about rescue. How did you get into health and safety? What attracted you to that particular field in the first place? I can understand from what you've said it's an important field, but how did you actually get into it?
Well, actually, a strange little path, actually, for me. I basically fell into it by accident. I did an HND in law, and I had a place at Edinburgh to do a second year, to get into a second year of a law degree.
Yeah.
And I decided to take a year out to go and work for an oil services company up in Aberdeen. And whilst doing that, I was doing kind of like a paralegal role, helping the lawyers and putting together contracts and tenders and whatever else, learning a little bit of practical experience. And when I was doing that, it was quite a smallish company. They said, well, there's some new health and safety legislation coming in. It's called the Six Pack. It was coming in the early 90s. Okay. We need somebody to actually run the health and safety for us. Are you interested? I thought, well, I'm in my early 20s. Why not? Let's just another string to the bow. So they said, we're going to put you on a NEBOSH course, which is one of the qualifications for health and safety. So I went on this course. Great, absolutely loved it. I really enjoyed it. I thought, wow, there's so much to this. I mean, obviously I had the legal background. I was meeting engineers and everything else and talking to them and whatever else. And I thought, wow, this is amazing. This is fantastic. It's such a great, huge, I've always been a bit of a practical person. So I've always loved the sort of engineering side of things anyway. That's basically where it came from. So I did the course and I thought, I love this. I really do. So I kind of started to make it my career. I extended my stay with a company for another year. And then I was eventually with them for 6 years in the health and safety role, increasingly in the health and safety role. I never went back to university. I never finished my law degree and I never became a lawyer, unfortunately.
Right. Okay, well, you made a good career out of health and safety. It is interesting the way people can sometimes fall into successful careers, even if it wasn't planned. Okay, so can you give us? I'm just wondering. I think it's always helpful for people to hear sort of actual stories. I think people with health and safety, yes, they know it's important. I think the way you laid out, the move from pathological, who cares as long as we're not caught. I like that quote in your slide, up to generative. This is the way we do things around here. But can you give us an example of the challenges you've tackled and faced in your career?
Yeah, certainly. I'll give you an example. It's quite an old example. Late 2001, I was an HSE manager for a big facilities management company at a large client site, corporate client site in London, in the city of London. This was just after 9/11, so it was about October, November 2001. And I was sitting at my desk one day and I had a call through from security that a package had been received, a suspicious package had been received in the mailroom.
Right.
Because it had been addressed to the CEO of the company, it had been opened as per protocol, and white powder had fallen out.
Right.
So at the time, there was a spate of potential suspected biological
Remember that.
attacks with anthrax. And basically, we thought, gosh, have we got an anthrax attack here? So immediately, we had very robust incident and crises management plans, and those were immediately put into place. Incident management teams, crisis management teams were put together very, very quickly. We isolated the people in question. We isolated the building with the ventilation systems, etc. And then we worked through the problem. So I was leading with the incident management team on site, and I was working through the problem at the same time, communicating with everybody in the building, communicating with the CEO and his board as well, who were in the building at the time, and working the problem through. So over a course of about 2-3 hours, using the plans as our basis, we still had to think a little bit out of the box. We actually managed to resolve the problem, talking to the external people and everything else, and bomb squad and whatever else it was that were involved at the time. The business continuity plans were also on standby in case we had to evacuate the building and
Right.
people had to go home and work. And we had over 700 people in the building at the time. So not a small amount of
Yeah.
people. So it was important that we got that. So anyway, about 2-3 hours later, the problem did get resolved. We found out later that the powder was chalk dust, and the police then got involved in the investigation and made.
But was it a mischievous?
It was,
Yeah.
yes, it was an oil company. I was working at corporate headquarters of an oil company, and it was somebody basically who had a problem with the petrol prices of this oil company.
Right. Okay. But yeah, I understand how you then focused in on that. Just bear in 1 second. And the next thing I'd like to talk about, just in terms of putting those programs in place, I can imagine with a big oil company, they by that sort of time knew they had to put in these sort of protocols. Is it difficult just planning or getting people to buy into sort of pretty detailed plans to deal with something like that?
It's difficult. I mean, it's, at the moment, if we look at, I think COVID did definitely focus a lot of people into what actually could happen with regards to this. So in terms of the buy-in for that, as long as the plans are robust and you work through a process to get to that point, I think there's much more of a when we look at the world or locally at the present moment in time, we seem to be lurching from crisis to crisis. So people can see that, the supply chains. You go to Tesco, there's no tomatoes all of a sudden. You can see that there's the economic backdrop that's going on at the present moment in time. So there's very much a risk-adverse public in place. So putting these plans in place is really important. It's critical to put these plans in place so that we can actually work through these plans. If I can give you an example, 30% of UK businesses are at risk of flooding at the present moment in time.
Well, 30%, did you say?
30% of businesses are at risk of flooding at the present moment in time. 4 out of 10 businesses do not recover from a catastrophic flood. Yet 20% of business, only 20% of businesses actually have contingency plans in place to deal with this kind of thing. So that's the, if you look at the sobering thought with those figures, you think to yourself, well, how can I not be one of those 30%? How can I not be one of those 4 out of 10? What can I put in place that will protect me, will protect my business, especially a small business? How can I protect that moving forward?
Okay. And in terms of sort of post-COVID, do you see the world as changed? It seems to me a little bit, maybe not specific for what you're doing for, say, the larger companies, but that sort of like crises like 9/11, maybe even the financial crisis, but certainly COVID, maybe make smaller companies move forward. Has there been a change in thinking, you think, post-COVID? Are people more...
I think so. I think we have gone back to a bit of a normal, maybe a new normal, if you like.
Right.
But if you do look at the world, you look at the climate change going on. Look at what's going on in Greece at the moment.
Yeah.
We had temperatures of 40 degrees last year in Britain for the first time ever.
Yeah.
It is important that we do have contingency plans in place. It is difficult sometimes to get that over to people, especially being a small business. You think, well, I'm not in central London. I'm not going to get a terrorist attack. I'm not going to get this. This is what I hear when I speak to companies outside London. But something else can happen, like a flood, like a cyber attack, for instance. Like hacking, like your IT going down. These are all issues that can go on with regards to business continuity, incident management, crisis management, and then having health and safety implications from that as well.
Okay. Let's move on to thinking about sort of our audience is probably predominantly small to medium-sized businesses. When it comes to compliance with health and safety law, and I know you take people beyond the basic compliance, but let's start there. What are the sort of like the non-negotiables that every business owner should be sort of considering as part of their duty, in a sense, as part of their fiduciary duty as a director of a company? What should business owners be looking at as a base level in terms of how they approach health and safety law?
Well, every business must have a health and safety policy. If the business is over 5 people, then that policy has to be written down. Right. So then what we can do then is we can help the business develop a policy. Now, there's 3 parts to a policy. You've got, we call it GOA, as in the Indian state. General statement of G is general statement of intent, which is what you see on the wall. It's our commitment to health and safety. This is what we're going to do. Then you've got the organizational arrangements. Who does what with regards to health and safety?
Who's the fire marshal? Who's that?
Exactly, and everything else. Who has responsibility? And then you've got the practical arrangements, the A of the GOA, which is basically what you have in place to manage health and safety. What are we going to do with regards to health and safety risk assessments? Do we have DSE, display screen equipment? Do we have manual handling? And whatever it might be, COSH or chemicals, whatever it is, you can have a statement then of whatever it might be. And then if you need more detailed requirements, then we can go into more detailed requirements with you. For instance, under the management regulations, which was part of the original 6-pack way back in 1992, and it's been it's now 1999. Basically, that is to govern risk assessment, how you do risk assessment in the workplace. So again, we can help on that side of things there. So these are the basic non-negotiables that have to go in, and then you've got fire and everything else that goes in with that as well. Okay,
I understand that. So how does Rescue guide companies in sort of navigating the regulations? Because I mean, any small business owner will tell you there's a load of regulations they have to deal with, from tax. This, and they go to their accountants perhaps to help them deal with that. Some of which they can do in-house, but if they don't have the detailed experience, how do you guide companies in sort of navigating these regulations?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of companies look at health and safety, they look at health and safety regulations and see this daunting minefield in front of them. And what we want to do is navigate the way through that minefield with them and partner up with them, hold their hand, if you like, to get them through that minefield. What do they need to do? What do they need to do with regards to the nature and complexity of their company? So what we can do then is we can navigate that to fulfill their legal obligation And then we do that through auditing, and we initially carry out a health and safety audit on site with them.
Yeah.
So we look at their business, we look at the nature of their business, the complexity of their business. What do they actually need? We don't want to just give them something that they don't need. It's got to be something that is going to be practical to them. It's going to be useful to them. And then through that, we might do a gap analysis on site, see what they've got at the present moment in time and what they actually need. And then we look at it from a point of view of what's critical, what's the regulatory compliance that we need to do, what should they have, and what might be nice to have as well.
Okay.
And we take it in that respect there. So we're not giving, I'm a single, I'm an SME as well. So I take that into account, that when I'm going to see an SME, I'm not going to go, right, I'm going to sell you the world, because that's not what I'm about.
Yeah.
I want to give you your regulatory, your must-haves, and then we'll talk about the nice-to-haves if you want to go down that route as well, like the training or whatever it might be.
Okay. And in terms of, if you could give us an example of something you might have done recently with a SME in terms of helping them comply.
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm working with a manufacturing company at the moment. They've got 12 employees on site, single site. So basically, I was called in. They needed some their health and safety documents were out of date, and the risk assessments were out of date. So I was called in. I initially did a health and safety audit with them and a fire safety audit. And that's just going through with a load of questions, doing almost a gap analysis as to where they are at the present, where they need to be. And again, with the 3 steps I was talking about earlier. And basically, I sat down and said, right, this is what you need to put into place. We then put together an action plan, a Gantt chart, and we worked through that. So we rewrote the health and safety policy. They wanted a couple of other policies like incident management, COSH and whatever else. We did that with them as well. And we also worked with them on the risk assessment side of things. So I went in and did the risk assessments in conjunction with their staff on site. They're the experts. I'm not the expert on a certain machine. I can advise you on that machine, but you're the expert on that machine. So I need you with me to talk me through the process of what we can do and how we can actually put the control measures in place.
I don't want to scare people, but have you got any examples of where somebody didn't comply, the consequences of not complying? I'm sure you have.
Unfortunately, I do. Unfortunately, I do. I recently was called by a company, another manufacturing company, and they used angle grinders on site. And unfortunately, they had a very serious accident with an angle grinder. The guard was loose. Right. The angle grinder had kicked back and it had gone into the guy's hand, causing a very, very nasty cut in the hand. Yeah. So I was called in. Again, we've started on that. I mean, that's a reactionary one where they've been called in, they've had an accident, they've called me in, and now we're working with them at the present moment in time in the process to make them much more safe. So we're looking at the policy, we're looking at risk assessments at the present moment in time and working through that at present.
Okay. So could you, particularly for our audience of predominantly SMEs, do you just like summarise why is it paramount for SMEs to get it right on health and safety?
Well, I mean, obviously, as an SME, health and safety might not be as prevalent as you probably would want it to be. So it's important that people do health and safety. There are certain compliances that you have to go through. There's certain compliances that you have to do to make like as we discussed before with the policy and everything else, risk assessments, etc. But what we can do is we can assist businesses like that. I mean, a lot of companies, they're too small to employ a full-time health and safety person. So what they will do instead is they'll outsource that, like they do with accountancy or whatever it might be. And we can do that as well. We offer retained services packages for companies, and we will tailor that package to the nature and complexity of that company. So we'll sit down with them and we'll come in on a regular basis, whatever they want us to do on a monthly or whatever it might be. Initially, it might be a monthly, and then we can maybe push it out to a 3-monthly if they want that, or we can just be on call for them. It's just that little bit of reassurance as well. They can pick up the phone, call me and say, well, what about this? What about that? How do we do this? How do we do that? and it's the reassurance that we've got that.
And presumably you will do training in specific things if needed, and I think you work with outside providers if
I do
that's
indeed. I do indeed. Yeah, I work with a number of outside providers. We can't be experts in everything,
yeah.
so I do some training in house. I do bespoke training, and I can write a training package for a company. If there's something a bit more specialised, I do go outside and use other trainers as well.
Okay, and one point that hadn't struck me, but obviously, if a lot of companies might be looking to develop ISO standards and things like that, and often health and safety is an important part of that, so that it can link to a sort of a wider business benefits as well. And I understand you're quite knowledgeable in making sure they comply with appropriate ISO standards as well.
Yes, I've had a lot of experience of ISO standards in my career. ISO 9001, I've implemented 9001, which is quality, 14,000 for environmental, 45,001 for health and safety, and I've also got a working knowledge of 22301, which is the business continuity standard as well. So I can implement that.
Just mindful of time, Alex. I know there's the other aspect to your business. We want to focus mainly on the health and safety side, which I think we've done. But just give some thoughts, particularly for smaller business, how crucial is business continuity planning? You mentioned obviously whether it's climate, floods, etc. Just give us a bit of an overview of why people should be thinking about business continuity, particularly perhaps for a smaller business.
Yeah, certainly. Basically, business continuity covers a wide range of things. We talked about flood. I gave you the flood example, but you've also got cyber attack. You've got supply chain failures.
Yeah.
Even losing a key employee is business continuity. So it's critical that people do have SMEs do have plans in place. The general consensus is, that's for the big guys in the city, or that's for the big companies. It's not. It can cover every company. It's basically a plan in place where we come in. We do a business continuity audit, very much like a health and safety audit and a gap analysis, and see where you are at the present, what the current state of play is. Then we look at the business impact assessments from that. How does any consequences from losing certain business processes going to affect your business? If you lose, how's it going to affect the bottom line? So it's important that we put that in place.
Yeah.
Then from the business impact assessments, we can tailor a proper business continuity plan for your business, and then we can test that, which is important as well.
Okay, so that can look at everything from IT to people to supply chain.
Everything, yeah, it can be everything indeed.
And and even I understand sort of like looking at reputational damages as well, because that can be quite pretty serious. Okay, now just again, mindful of time, because I've got a couple of questions coming on the health and safety front. I'd just like to fire those at you before we wrap up. But just in terms of business continuity, that is done through you and Rescue. So that would be it's the same company, same operation. You lead it. It's just a sort of a different side to your
That's
business.
correct. Yes, it is. It is. Okay. It is indeed.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm a member of the Business Continuity Institute as well. So
okay, that's good to know. I think it's something that people don't give enough consideration to, and even on the key employees, that is an important one. Okay, we've had a question regarding health and safety. Is a lot of businesses allowing full or part-time working from home? Has that had a big impact on what you do, and how do you address that as part of the work you do?
Very much so indeed. I'm currently working with it's a good example to use. I'm currently working with an IT company in Birmingham, and all of their employees are based at home. So at the present moment in time, we're conducting risk assessments and workstation assessments for their workforce, everything from Glasgow to the Isle of Wight, and we do that through Teams. Rather than just good to see them, because it's not cost effective for them. It's not cost effective for me to go and see people like that. So what we're doing instead is we're covering it through a paper-based risk assessment form at the moment, and then what we're doing is after that is we're actually then meeting them on Teams, and then they're able to put a camera around, show me the workstation, show me where they're working, show me everything else, and then we can put the risk assessment together like that. So it is important that the risk assessment does cover home-based working, but only for equipment supplied by the employer. So
Okay.
if the equipment is supplied by the employer, then obviously we have to risk assess that. But it should be a safe space for people to work in as well.
And just on a not entirely dissimilar situation, I can understand if you are a company that sends out, say, technicians or engineers to sites, that if it, say to a retail, they were going to retail sites for a client, that there will be conditions imposed by the retailer as to how they should operate in there. What about a domestic situation? If somebody was going into people's homes to fix electrics or boilers or fix anything, frankly, does that bring a level of complexity to it?
Yeah, it does. I mean, obviously, you can't predict where people are going to go and what kind of risks they're going to face. Again, another example, I'm working with a local company, and they're a company of auctioneers. So they send people into houses to do evaluations on various
Okay.
antiques, whatever it might be. So we've just developed a lone working policy for them. So it's a little checklist that they go in, just making sure that everything is safe when they go in, especially if they're working alone. And that also includes trip hazards and how to get hold of people and these kind of things as well. And so that can be applied to electricians, to plumbers, to trades, going in and working in people's houses as well. So the same principle applies.
Okay. Well, look, I'm very mindful of time, and thanks for those extra questions. So look, thanks for your valuable insights today. For those who want to learn more, obviously you're on the No Limits community. They can contact you through there. But how else, if they wanted to find out a bit more about you, what's the best way of contacting you, Alex?
The best way of contacting me is through my website, which is www.rescue, which is rehsq.co.uk. On there is a contact form. There's also there on telephone numbers, various telephone numbers, emails, etc., to get hold of me as well. And I'm more than happy to come out and have a chat with you, or have a chat over Teams or Zoom or whatever it might be.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much, Alex. Thank you for your expertise. I certainly learned a lot there, and I think there's a lot that you've touched on that I think a lot of our community and even a wider audience will find very useful. Thank you very much for your time this morning. So just to let people know, next week's episode 16 in this Munch&Learn series is Effective Marketing on a Small Budget with Coach Simak Konkada. That's Tuesday the 1st of August at 8 o'clock for the live show, and it will be available recording. So thank you again, Alex, and thank you very much. That joined us or are listening subsequently. So thank you very much.